you all for having us. Hello, my name is Latanga. I work with FEMA as a media relations specialist, and I am here to give you guys some information that may be useful. I understand that there was a severe storm that took place that caused some damage with flooding, and a lot of people have been impacted by that event. So we're here to provide disaster relief, and we're going to provide some grants, which is money that does not need to be repaid for people that have serious damage, and I'd like to be able to share that information with you.
Hello, my name is Eric Osterberg. I'm the city manager of Ferguson. We're happy to be here today with FEMA, talking about some aid that's going to be given to our community. As Latanga mentioned, we experienced historic flooding on July 25th through the 28th. It was a 1 in a 100-year event. We had over 1,000 homes that were impacted by flooding, dozens of residential cars. We lost a few of our tennis courts in Forest Wood Park, as well as we saw some building damage there. We lost a fire truck, so this has been quite an event. And as you know, we were also, with all of the homes that were flooded, we're still navigating flood debris pickup as well. So how exactly does FEMA help in a disaster?
After there is a federal disaster declared and we come in to support the state, remember we're always here as guests because the state has welcomed us to come in to provide support to you all. We come in, do an assessment, and then find out how we may be able to help. Some of the forms in which help may be provided for people in individual and, let's see, I think household residents, so we call it an individual households program. IHP is a term that you're going to hear. What you'll find out is that we have products that we typically make available for different types of disaster. For this one, we're going to have something that would be like home repair. That would consist of people that may need to have mold or any type of impact from the damage that they'll need assistance with repair. There are people that may need help with replacements. Their home may need to be replaced if the river ran through it. Yeah. Other things that we would do would have to do with some people may need to find a new apartment. We can help them with rental assistance if that's needed. We do tons of things, and one of the things that I think is really important is that some people may have even lost their jobs consequentially because of the flood. If that just so happens to be the case, be sure to call our 1-800 number because you'll find out we have something called disaster unemployment insurance. And what that does is provide you with some level of compensation because you're incapable of going to your job consequentially because of the flood. So that's something that's available and it's being floated around, and we're sharing that information as much as possible. Be sure to share it with your citizens. Some other things that they may know about is that sometimes we help with childcare, and legal assistance is a big one. We've had people literally come to a disaster recovery center, which is what we refer to as a DRC. And we have 3 of them that are set up now. There's more, I think, if I understand correctly. There may even be one here soon.
Oh, correct.
Wonderful. And what you may want to do is share that when you come to these places, these resources are available to them once they complete their application. But those are the ways that we would start off initially being able to support your recovery efforts once we respond.
So I hear that there's a bit of a misconception in our community that perhaps there's some people who will be eligible for assistance while some aren't going to be eligible. Can you kind of speak to that?
Absolutely. The first thing I want everyone to know is that if you are applying with FEMA, you're not just putting in an application and waiting for us to call you and offer you money. I want that to be very clear. You are working towards eligibility. You have to become eligible to receive the grant. So when you come in and you submit your information, you're stating or proving your case. That's very important. We need to know about essential living spaces, and the way that I can unpack that should be useful to you is this. You're looking to tell us things that are about why your home is not safe. On your application, tell us why your home is no longer sanitary. Or tell us why your home is no longer functional. If your appliances are no longer working, if you've checked your thermostat in the middle of the summer, do check your thermostat. Because what you may find is that your furnace may not be working. So give it a whirl, just check it out, see if it's working, and go through and do a really serious check on your home. I know that school has just recently started in this community. This is a wonderful time to use the quiet in your home to actually go through and do a good assessment.
Yeah, so what kind of things are you typically looking for as FEMA on the applications?
As I mentioned, we do individuals and households. So if as an individual you've been impacted by this as a homeowner or as a renter, we may be able to help you. And again, the support will come in this way. If you have insurance and you find that you are underinsured, and you may not necessarily know that, but if you find that what is happening with you, with your insurance company, doesn't necessarily sound like it's going to be an adequate amount to take care of what you've ascribed to have been what you signed up for, you may want to come down and submit an application with us.
Okay.
Should there be a finding that you, first of all, if there is a finding that you're underinsured, we may be able to offset that.
I see. So it sounds like we're going to need people to just have their insurance paperwork ready, maybe claims that they've already filed. Something that we've actually prompted our community to do already is to kind of document any losses of appliances or damage. So would that be helpful towards kind of establishing that their home's unsafe?
Perfect. And I want to caboose on that. Make sure you bring verifiable identification.
Okay.
Make sure that you bring information that shows where you're living at the time, because some people are displaced. So let us know the address for the place that you're living at. Bring in information that verifies which address that you were living at that was actually impacted by the flood as well. So along with what you've just stated, get some pictures or either document those details along with what you just said, and you can come in and initiate your case. While we're here, there's 3 ways to apply. 1-800-621-3362. You can actually use your mobile phone and complete your application. You can also go to a website, disasterassistance.gov, and you can complete your application that way as well. While we're talking, I should also mention to you.
Before we move on, I want to say that we also have all of the information about ways to apply at our city website, FergusonFloodRecovery.com. We have the website that you just mentioned, Latanga just mentioned, as well as the phone number, and then a direct link to the website for the application as well. Again, that's FergusonFloodRecovery.com.
And while you're here, we should go ahead and mention to your listeners and the viewers that we're going to continue to work with you all and keep you up to date with all of our news releases. So any information that we would have at FEMA, you all will also be able to be an authority and to share that information, because we're going to keep you looped in.
Yeah, and as we've been receiving information from FEMA, we have been updating that city website, FergusonFloodRecovery.com. That's the best place for our residents to go to get the most up-to-date information.
Great deal.
Latanga, I have another question for you. In the event that one of our residents gets a rejection for aid, what additional steps should they take after that?
So first of all, we don't necessarily reject anyone. What happens is something happens where there's a determination letter. And what it will read is something similar to this. We have determined. You'll see a whole bunch of information. Look for the part that says determined. When you get there, it's going to tell you what you need to do. Because a determination letter does not necessarily mean that we're rejecting your application. It may just simply mean that you need to bring some other information in. Should you get to the point where you are told that you are not eligible, you can always appeal. So even though somebody tells you, should you get to that point, that your application is not going to go forward, that's when you would say, I'd like to appeal, please. And what you would do is come down to the Disaster Recovery Center, the DRC. You can call the 1-800 number, 1-800-621-3362. I wouldn't recommend going to the website for this. You want to talk to someone. They're going to walk you through the steps. And if you remember that the reason that you are applying for aid with FEMA is because you want your home to be safe, you want your home to be sanitary, and you want your home to be functional in order to recover from the flooding, you're going to go ahead and write that letter to fit into that profile. And when you state your case, I would hope that you would get different results. While we're here, I should also mention some other information. Whenever FEMA comes to town to help with a disaster, we also bring with us SBA, and that stands for Small Business Administration. And I want to give you some information about what they do. And before I do that, I'm going to take care of some business. Let me tell you how much money we've already made available in this community. We are at the $20.4 million mark. There's been over 6,000 applicants that have successfully applied with FEMA and has received cash grants. That fits into any of those categories that I've recently mentioned. Also, I'd like to tell you about the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a good time to talk about it, being that we're discussing heavy storms and flooding. If you do not have insurance, As I mentioned, FEMA helps with people that either are uninsured or are underinsured. Please consider this time to consider getting to put in an application and get some flood insurance. We have people that have applied for their assistance with the National Flood Insurance, and I think that we have a total of $8.6 million for people that have submitted claims and have already had checks in the mail. So the program works, is the first thing I'd like to say. And then I'd like to segue into another category where money may be missing. Please go ahead. I just
wanted to reiterate to our community that, again, so if you, for whatever reason, are getting a communication from FEMA that your application isn't moving forward, just again, make sure to read that whole letter. In that letter, it's going to say what additional information they need. And then if you're having trouble getting that information together, that's when they need to go to the Disaster Recovery Center. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Just wanted to sum that back up.
You're doing well, and I think it's so great because I wanted to mention to you based on what you're saying to me, is that apparently there has been some people in this community that has received the appeal letters.
Correct, yes.
If you read it and you don't understand it, please call us. If you've read it and you believe that it's not fair what we're suggesting to you, give us a call. That's the one thing I'd like for you to know in your community, again, is that it's not a rejection. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's very helpful for everybody to know.
Okay. I'm going to have a team member that's going to come in and share some information with you for the Small Business Administration. Mm-hmm. I'd like to give you some information that we have to explain how FEMA works with SBA mm-hmm. and the significance of some information that FEMA may give to you mm-hmm. that could further benefit you receiving even more money from FEMA.
Excellent.
Okay, great. We have this category that once you've completed your application with FEMA, someone may look at it and say, we'd like to have you go over and see someone at SBA, which is the Small Business Administration. Should you be told to do this, do not self-determine that you don't want a loan and walk out the door. Be sure to make sure you tell your residents this. Mm-hmm. Here's what happens. If you go out the door and say, I'm done, I don't want the loan, you've left money that could be made available to you through other means. FEMA not only works individually, we have other agencies that we can work with to support you in your recovery endeavors. So go over to the Small Business Administration, complete the application. If you are found to not be capable of receiving a loan, and you still have needs, we've got two other categories that we may be able to help with. Mm-hmm. It's called an other needs category, and we also have a critical needs category. But unless you go through that process, you've eliminated the concept of even going back to tap into those funds.
So is there some kind of income test that's considered by SBA that kind of determines whether or not you're moving forward in some of those additional categories?
It may be, and what I'm going to do is have my colleague speak to that because he's like an SBA just guru.
Okay.
The one thing I can seep to you that I want you guys to look forward to hearing about him with is that if you've got a $2,000 painting that's messed up in your home and FEMA's not going to help you with it because it doesn't help with you being safe, sanitary, and functional, mm-hmm. but doggone it, that's important to you, SBA may be able to help you. In doing so, what I wanted to share with you was this. You would only have to get loans, and some of them that you can qualify for, 1%. 1% and some extra numbers on the other side of the decimal. Mm-hmm. 1%. He's going to give you more information about that.
Excellent.
Besides that, I think I'd probably just want to share with you again that 1-800 number, 1-800-621-3362. Disasterassistance.gov is for FEMA, but then I'd like to defer to you again for your website.
Yes, again, that is FergusonFloodRecovery.com. All one word, no dashes.
Okay, then I'll close out by giving you guys some of the Disaster Recovery Center addresses, if that's okay. We are hoping that you guys will get one here in Ferguson, but until that time comes along, we've got 3 of them that are open right now. One is in Hazelwood. The address is 8969 Dunn Road. We also have one that's in We're in Rankin, so it's considered as St. Louis, if I understand. I'm going to give you the address, and it's 1313 Newstead, but I hear that you guys would reference it as on the corner of Page and Newstead. And then the last one is in St. Charles County. I'm going to read that one for you. It's 1025 Club Road. And until we get one here in Ferguson, if we get one here in Ferguson, let's hope.
Yeah, so
think
I can speak
positively.
about that briefly. We're working with the Urban League on West Florissant to try to site a DRC there. We looked around our community and we felt that was the best location to allow for people who might not have other means of transportation to get to some of these other ones, just to be able to walk down the street to that. So we'll be giving some updates about that within the next week or so. Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us here.
And, I have one more question for you, Latanga, which is how long is FEMA going to be in the area?
Oh, that's a good question, and I like answering it. Until we're no longer needed.
Excellent.
Until we're no longer needed.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty with the concept of coming to help after a disaster. No one can plan. You can plan for a disaster, but doggone it, everything that I planned for is now in the drawer that went down along with all the other flooding stuff.
Yeah.
So there you go with planning. So ultimately, we just say until we're no longer needed.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Latanga.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. We have the Small Business Administration with us today to talk about some of the things that they're doing in our community following the flood.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for having me on. My name is Corey Williams, Public Information Officer with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance, and we're pleased to partner with FEMA. Whereas FEMA does the grant assistance, a lot of people don't realize, that we offer low-interest disaster assistance loans to businesses, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits.
That's excellent. So if you're a resident of our city and you have been impacted by the flood, how do they make contact with you?
Another great question, Eric. So the first step in the disaster recovery process, after they register with FEMA, and of course, Latanga went through all those ways, they may receive a referral to the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance.
I see. So they're going through the disaster assistance website or the phone number, and then at some point they may be referred to you.
And they may be referred.
Okay.
And if they are referred, Eric, then the one thing we want to make sure that they do is complete that application. So as a Ferguson homeowner or renter may ask, well, why SBA? I don't own a business. But again, in times of disaster, we offer low-interest home loans up to $200,000 to repair, replace disaster-damaged real estate, and up to $40,000 to repair, replace disaster-damaged personal property, which would include any vehicles that may have been damaged in Ferguson or any of those, in the surrounding areas.
Excellent. So is that available to both renters and homeowners?
It is. And
Excellent.
renters can also borrow to $40,000 to repair, replace disaster-damaged personal property, and also also their vehicles as well. Interest rates, Eric, are as low as 1.688%. No closing costs, no cost to apply, no prepayment penalty, and all of our loans have a 5-month deferment. So it's a great program. And the thing is, if we're unable to approve someone for a loan, we're going to send them right back to FEMA for further grant assistance.
Excellent. So what documentation do our residents need to have ready and available to give to you all?
Well, Eric, that's another great question. What we want to do is make sure that they take advantage of the disaster recovery centers. There's one in Hayesworth, the Civic Center, and also one at the Rankin Tech Center off Page and Newstead. The one thing is bring themselves. If there's any supplemental documentation that someone may need, of course, you want to bring your driver's license and any kind of ID. And if there are any kind of banking information, just as the same with FEMA, you just want to make sure you bring all that financial information. But keep in mind that the Disaster Recovery Center is that one-stop shop. So if they need to make multiple visits, they can always bring supplemental information later.
Excellent. So is it helpful for our residents to bring pictures of the damage or documentation of the personal property that they've lost, appliances, bedding, things of that nature?
Another great question. So yes, that would be very helpful for the case, not only for FEMA and SBA, but keep in mind that FEMA and SBA will also send loss verifiers out into the field. Now, also make sure that when people come into the field, if they come to your home and they don't have a federal government ID, this is what's called a PIV badge. Do not let them onto your property, because one thing, Eric, that happens as a result of disaster, fraud. So we also want to make sure we're protecting Ferguson homeowners and renters that may be impacted, saying, oh, I'll do your inspection for this or certain things like that. So everything.
So I'm hearing that FEMA and SBA, they're never going to ask for money from our residents.
That's correct.
Good.
That's correct.
Good to hear. So for our businesses and our nonprofits in the community, what help is available to them?
Yes. So, Eric, businesses can borrow up to $2 million to repair, replace disaster damaged real estate, machinery, inventory, equipment. But the most important thing, Eric, that I really try to emphasize for our business owners is the need for working capital to sustain that business during this disaster recovery period. And that's the purpose of our economic injury disaster loan program. It provides that working capital for the businesses to use how they see fit, to pay their lease obligations, pay their employees, pay their chamber dues, whatever is necessary to keep that business operational.
Now, for lost inventory, is that something that those loans are eligible for?
Yes, that's a part of the actual
Excellent.
real estate machinery and equipment. And one thing that businesses may look into, a lot of businesses, I'm sure you're well aware of, Eric, they don't want to pledge collateral. So a business can borrow up to $25,000 for their physical loss and up to $25,000 for their economic injury, and that's an unsecured loan. Now, they can't cross collateralize. They can't get $50,000 for economic injury and zero for physical loss, but even up to that $25,000 for their physical loss and $25,000 for economic injury could be just enough to keep those business doors open.
And are the interest rates low like some of the other loans that we've been hearing about?
They are very low, Eric. So interest rates for the business owners is as low as 2.935%. Nonprofits is fixed at 1.875%. And homeowners and renters is as low as 1.688%.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
In the event someone can't make it to a disaster recovery center, what other ways are available for them to apply?
Another great question, Eric. So one of the things that they could do, they can always go to disasterloanassistance.sba.gov, or they can call the 1-800 number, which is 1-800-659-2955. But just make sure that they register with FEMA first. That starts that disaster recovery process.
Excellent. Well, Corey, we want to thank you so much for coming by the city and kind of explaining some of these things to our residents.
Thank you so much, Eric, for having me. It's a pleasure being able to help out the business owners, homeowners, renters, and nonprofits in Ferguson.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.